A goal was scored, and then it wasn't. The reason was a number, 2.4 centimeters. That's the distance the technology said one attacker's shoulder had strayed beyond the last defender. 2.4 centimeters, narrower than the width of your thumb. Narrower than this one stripe of the pitch. Now hold that number in your head, because here's the problem this entire channel is built on. On that same play, on that same broadcast frame, the margin of error in the measurement, everything the tool could not actually see, was estimated at around 13 centimeters. The verdict was 2.4. The uncertainty was 13. The thing they were sure about was 5 times smaller than the thing they weren't. The margin was smaller than the error bar. So let's do what the broadcast never did. Let's actually measure it. Manchester City against West Ham. The 19th of February, 2020. City are already 2-0 up when the ball breaks to them again. Gabriel Jesus turns it in. The net moves. The players wheel away. And then the check begins. Because somewhere in the build-up, Raheem Sterling was, by a sliver, ahead of the last defender. Watch the reconstruction, and be honest with yourself. You cannot see it. Nobody in the stadium could see it. No linesman, with the naked eye, was ever going to flag it. And that is the whole reason this decision existed at all. The human eye had already failed, so the call was taken out of human hands entirely and handed to a line drawn on a screen. Which leaves us one simple question. That line, how good was it really? Before we trust the 2.4, we have to know what drew it. And in 2020, it was not the system you are picturing now. There was no chip in the ball, no skeleton tracking, no semi-automated system firing out a slick three-dimensional animation. What the Premier League had in 2020 was a replay operator drawing lines by hand on ordinary broadcast video, running at 50 frames a second. 50 frames a second sounds precise. One picture every 200ths of a second. For almost anything in daily life, that is plenty. For a footballer at a dead sprint, it is nowhere near enough. And this is where the error bar is born. Not in one blunder, by one person, but in 3 separate places where the measurement is forced to guess. Let's take them one at a time. A player at a full sprint covers about 8 meters every second. The camera takes 50 snapshots in that second. So do the arithmetic. Divide the distance by the frames, and between any 2 consecutive pictures, the last frame where he is level, and the very next frame where he is ahead, a sprinting player has already moved 16 centimeters. 16 centimeters, and that is at 8 meters a second. At the fastest speeds recorded in the Premier League, around 35 kilometers an hour, the gap between 2 frames stretches to an estimated 19. Think about what that means. The true instant the pass was played almost never lands on a frame. It lands between 2 of them, inside a 16 to 19 centimeter blind spot, baked into the film itself. The operator cannot freeze reality. They can only freeze the nearest frame and treat it as if it were the exact moment. So already, before we have even drawn a line, we have a verdict of 2.4 centimeters and a gap of 16, where the technology simply does not have a picture. Now the harder guess. Offside isn't measured whenever we like. It is measured at the exact instant the ball is played. So the operator's first job, before any line, is to find that frame. Which picture, out of 50 in that second, is the one where boot meets ball? And here the human eye betrays us again. A 2022 motion capture study from the University of Bath tested people doing exactly this, picking the frame of the kick against precise optical tracking. On average, observers were 132 milliseconds late. They consistently thought the ball was struck after it actually was. 132 milliseconds sounds like nothing, but run the numbers at sprint speed, and it is roughly a full meter of movement. A meter! The study's own authors put it plainly. Offside, they wrote, should not be fought over millimeters. So pick the kick frame 1 tick too early or 1 tick too late, a mistake the human eye makes by default. And a 2.4 centimeter offside doesn't just shrink, it can flip sides completely. Offside becomes onside on the strength of a single frame nobody can pin down. Say we get lucky. Say the right frame is chosen. There is still a third guess, and it is the one you actually see on screen. The line has to be laid across a body, and not the whole body. The rules ask for the furthest forward part that can legally play the ball. a shoulder, an armpit, the front of a thigh. On a broadcast image blown up to fill your television, the operator is deciding by eye which cluster of pixels counts as the edge of that shoulder. Nudge that line a few pixels one way or the other, and out on the pitch, where the real distances live, that is centimeters again. So now we can name all three: the frame gap, the kick frame, the line placement. Three separate guesses, stacked one on top of the other, and not one of them was ever accurate to the width of a thumb. And here's what makes it sting. Football had already proven it could do this properly, for a different line. The goal line. When the ball fully crosses it, goal line technology gives an answer in about a second. Automated. No operator drawing anything by hand. And tested against a published tolerance of a few centimeters before it is ever allowed near a match. It is binary. In or out. And crucially, everyone agrees the tool is precise enough to answer the exact question being asked of it. Now put that beside the offside line of 2020. Same sport, same season. One line is automated, certified, and trusted to the centimeter. The other is a human, dragging a graphic across a 50 frames a second replay, with no published tolerance at all. And it was being asked to resolve a distance smaller than a thumbnail. Football solved the goal line. It had not solved the offside line. It just started acting like it had. So let's stack the three guesses and see how big the doubt really gets. Contemporaneous analysis put the margin of error at Sterling's sprint speed at around 13 centimeters. And when you stack the kick frame selection on top of the line placement, the same analysis reckoned the total uncertainty could reach 38.8. I want to be precise about what those two figures are because precision is the whole point of this channel. 13 and 38 are one newspaper's estimates, not a tolerance the system published, because the system published none. The 2.4 is the real broadcast number. The 13 and the 38 are the range that real number was floating around inside. And there it is, the entire thesis, in one image. Watch it. A verdict of 2.4 and an error bar of 13, growing straight through it and swallowing it whole. The number the technology was certain about was smaller than the number it could not see. The margin was smaller than the error bar. Now, this is the part almost everyone gets backwards, so stay with me. This does not mean the call was wrong. I am not telling you Sterling was onside. I genuinely don't know that, and neither does anyone else. What I am telling you is narrower and more damning. The tool was not precise enough to say he was offside by 2.4 centimeters, because 2.4 is buried inside its own margin of error. Here is the everyday version. Imagine a ruler marked only in 10 centimeter steps. It can tell you a wall is roughly a meter. It absolutely cannot tell you the wall is a meter and 2.4 centimeters. That reading is finer than the ruler can resolve. In 2020, the Premier League read a thumb's width off a ruler that could not resolve one. And then, it disallowed a goal on the strength of it. The problem was never that the officials lied. The problem was a false decimal place. A number reported to a precision the machine did not have. And if you think Sterling was a one-off, that season says otherwise. This was the house style. 3 months earlier, Roberto Firmino had a goal ruled out, and the Premier League's own published explanation was that the line was aligned to his armpit, which was marginally ahead of the last defender. A week after that, another goal died because John Lundstrom's toe was judged offside in the build-up. Armpits, toes, fans started joking that players were being ruled offside by an eyelash. But every one of those calls was the same category error as Sterling's, a thumb-width verdict, read off a ruler graduated in the length of a whole hand. The precision on screen was theater. The precision in the tool wasn't there. And here is the trap underneath all of it. And it is written into the laws of the game. Offside, in law, is binary. There is no tolerance written anywhere in the rulebook. No close enough. No benefit of the doubt. As football's own lawmakers put it back in 2019, offside is offside, even to the tightest of margins. So the law demands a perfectly sharp zero-width line. But every tool we have just examined produces a fuzzy one, a band, an estimate, with centimeters of slop. The technology was handed a question with no tolerance, using instruments that were nothing but tolerance. It produced false certainty from the very first frame. Which brings us to the part that closes the case. Because within 18 months, the Premier League effectively admitted every word of this. For the 2021 season, they started drawing thicker offside lines with a new rule. Where the thick lines overlapped, the attacker was on. In plain terms, that handed the striker a tolerance of about 5 centimeters. The head of the referee's body, Mike Riley, put it in his own words. We have effectively reintroduced the benefit of the doubt to the attacking player, and the scale of it. By some estimates, roughly 20 goals that had been disallowed the previous season would, under the thicker lines, have sit with what a 5 centimeter tolerance actually is. It is the league drawing its own error bar, in ink, on the screen, and quietly agreeing that everything inside it should count as a goal, which is a confession. It is the sport conceding that a 2.4 centimeter offside was never a distance its system could honestly stand behind. They had been calling goals off inside the noise, and they widened the line to stop. So let's be careful, one last time, about what this story is and what it isn't. Nobody cheated. No official was corrupt, or biased, or asleep. Every person in that chain did their job honestly, with the frames in front of them. There is no villain in this video. There is a 50 frames a second film, a line dragged across it by hand, and a question those tools were never sharp enough to answer to the width of a thumb. The goal Gabriel Jesus scored that day might have been a perfectly good goal. We cannot prove it was, but we can prove that the reason it was erased, 2.4 centimeters, was smaller than everything the measurement could not see. It was a real number, reported to a precision that did not exist. And that is the thesis of everything we do here. We are not going to tell you the referee was wrong. We are going to draw the line, and then draw the error bar around it, and let you watch how often the second one swallows the first. 2.4. Error bar. An estimated 13. The margin was smaller than the error bar.